Hello, TikTok Live. I never know what to do during these first 3 to 5 minutes when no one is on yet. But TikTok's like, we're notifying people that you're live. I'm like, cool, do it. So yeah, let's let some people hop on here before we get into it. Wow, is that a gray hair? It might be. Before we get into it. Wow, is that a gray hair? It might be. It happens, what can I say? Brooklyn, it's okay. You little reactive puppy. Alright. So what are we talking about today? Today, episode 9 of It's Not Normal dropped, and I was very excited about that. I talked about my first no-contact Christmas, so that was interesting. This was the first, holiday season that came and went that I heard nothing from my parents, no message or anything like that, and this was kind of the first time that ever really happened. And so I just wanted to talk about it because I feel like this is something that a lot of us experience, and it's a really tricky thing, because it's supposed to be just this really happy, joyful time of year, and it is, but I think it also kind of brings to the surface some more negative emotions, or a little bit of sadness, and so I just kind of wanted to get on and talk about that and how I manage those more negative emotions. And Fervent Flamingo, hello. Your first no-contact Christmas too? Is that what I'm getting from that? And has it been, your just first Christmas? Was it Thanksgiving? I don't know. Second. Okay, cool. Did you find that this second time around was a bit easier than the first time? Was there a bit of a difference, or was it kind of similar? Since I moved out of my parents' house 5 years ago, I've had, I think every year I at least stopped by, for a time. Texts were exchanged, we were kind of in contact. And so this was the first time that there was just none of that. And it was kind of weird, I feel naturally something like that is kind of strange just because, I don't know, they're your parents, and it almost feels, I feel when it comes to this kind of relationship and going no contact, and I guess just the nature of my relationship with my parents and how it kind of ended, it almost feels like it's voluntary, you know what I mean? And it's I think that's what makes it a little weird to think about. But all in all, the day went pretty well. I was happy and definitely had a lot of peace of mind knowing that. I think one of the more stressful parts about the holidays in general, especially if you're living with narcissistic parents or whatever it might be, is you feel a certain amount of pressure or stress, being in that environment. And I know, for me, even when I would be there, especially after I moved out and I was kind of starting to see the world through this different lens, I had a different perspective on a lot of things. I felt really judged a lot of the time, when I would just kind of be expressing myself the way that I would be on the daily, and then I would kind of go back into this environment where, the last time I was there, a different me existed, or the people that were there, I had a different relationship to them, I was a different kind of person, I guess. I fulfilled a different role. And now it's, I guess I hated that feeling of judgment, repressed memories finally surfaced after no contact, dead to me now, so big grief. I'm sorry to hear that, Fervent Flamingo. It's definitely a hard thing. And yeah, I feel sometimes these memories just pop up out of nowhere, and then you're kind of forced to sit with those emotions and those feelings, and that can be uncomfortable. Hi, Bree. I have to see your family next week. I'm always really nervous to see them. I feel so different around them. So have you moved out? Are you living on your own? What does that look like? Are you in contact with them a lot? But yeah, I completely agree. I think something that I realized just through gaining perspective and I guess spending more periods of time away from my parents than with them was that I was actually a very different person than the person that I was, I guess, pretending to be when I was around them. And I think it was just because I was never really free to be myself in that environment. You know, I was afraid of doing something wrong or, you know, doing or saying something that my narcissistic parent wouldn't be happy about, and then adding to kind of like the tension or the controversy that maybe was already present. And so I think I just suited, or a lot of my opinions and my interests and the things that I did really suited my parents more so than myself. And getting distance from that and perspective where, you know, maybe now like 2, 3, 4, 6 months goes by, a year goes by, and like I'm not really around you, I'm really able to kind of like lean into who I am as an individual, you know, in an environment where I'm not feeling bad about it or judged about it, because in reality, like I'm not doing anything wrong, you know, just by being myself. And I remember, yeah, on like the rare occasions when I would go back for like a holiday or whatever it might be, just kind of wanting to be myself and then feeling pressured to kind of slip back into that role that I had always played around my parents, because I felt really judged for, I guess, the image that I was portraying of my truer self, but maybe an image that they hadn't really seen or got to know up until that point, if that makes sense. Isn't the same? Just, yeah, grief is weird. For sure. I'm happy to share my experiences. It's really awesome to kind of discover this community, you know, of people who have all been through such similar things. And I feel like sharing and being vulnerable with one another is really, like you said, validating, you know, to know that we're not in this alone, and the things that we've experienced are very true, and the longer term impacts of that, you know, are completely valid. I think what's really, I talked about this briefly in the podcast episode that I released today. And, you know, I recently lost my grandma earlier this year. It's actually almost a year now, which is pretty crazy. But, you know, my relationship with her was really great. And that kind of came to an end in a physical sense, obviously, once she passed away. And so that is like one type of grief, you know, where it's like, okay, this relationship is going to be different now, naturally, right? But with my parents, it's like these people are still physically here. You know, I can technically reach out to them or contact them or, you know, see them in person and have a conversation. But when you're not met with any kind of like support or, I guess, willingness to have those difficult conversations on the other end, and, you know, you make the decision to go no contact, that's a whole different kind of grief, you know, because, again, like it feels voluntary almost, like this difficult conversation or this issue at hand, whatever it might be, is more important than my relationship to my parents, you know, or at least that's how it can feel. It's like this is too big of a thing for them to just sit down and talk about, and instead, you know, they're willing to kind of like sacrifice our relationship and everything that we had kind of done up until that point, and I guess everything that we could have done moving forward. So that's really difficult. Bree, you only see your family twice a year. I was never free to be myself either. Thank you for your posts. For sure. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for supporting me. And twice a year, that sounds pretty manageable, although I'm sure it doesn't make those 2 times out of the year any easier. It was pretty limited for me for a while also, just kind of relegated to like major holidays. But this time around, it just didn't feel worth it to me, you know, because I was the one just consistently putting the effort in to try to like take steps in the right direction. And I was like, it's not my responsibility anymore to continue trying after I've tried and I've tried and I've tried again, and I haven't been met with any kind of support or willingness to like do this with me. And it's an interesting thing to come to terms with, I guess, especially around this time of year, because growing up, I was a super attached kid. I was attached to people. I was attached to traditions, and I did have a fair share of family traditions growing up. Like we did pizza on Friday nights, and we hosted Christmas Eve dinner with my cousins and my extended family for a long time, and all of these things that I really came to value as a kid and even as a young adult that I always imagined would be part of my life as I got older. And I think sometimes around this time of year, like major holidays or events or whatever it might be, like you're just prompted to think about that, even if it's not consciously, if it's just kind of like there and you're realizing like, okay, like this is what I'm doing today. It's a little bit different than maybe what I thought I would be doing when I was younger, but that's okay. It is weird how small we had to make ourselves, for sure. Emmy May. It's my second Christmas no contact with Dad. Ended November last year. How did that feel, being the second Christmas no contact? Was it easier than the first? How are you feeling overall, just kind of in general? Hi, Corinne. Thanks for saying hi. Emmy, you've been a massive help to me and my older sister. I'm so, so glad. Thank you for saying that. It always amazes me how many people have been through or are currently going through something similar to what I've gone through. And I mean, for all of you who understand what this is like, when you grow up in that kind of environment, you're really encouraged, sometimes even pressured, to not talk about what's going on inside the house. Like what happens in this family stays in this family. And it's kind of looked at as like that's the right thing to do. We shouldn't talk to anyone about what's going on, especially the more negative things. And I think what that leads to, I think on top also of just being so controlled and sheltered and manipulated, you don't really have a lot of outside perspective. And I think that that's why I, for so long, was naive to so much of the abuse that I had been enduring. And I just think about it all the time with the things that I'm talking about and, the podcast episodes and the videos here on TikTok. Like, I want to make sure that the things that I'm putting out are helpful, you know what I mean, that are very honest and vulnerable, because I think about what my life would have been like had I seen someone talking about stuff like this in this way. Maybe something would have clicked for me a little bit earlier on, and I could have started to do a bit of research or understand the situation that I was in while I was in it. Because I think in these situations, I say it all the time, but knowledge is power. Knowing the situation that you're in, knowing the kind of people that you're dealing with and what they're capable of, maybe what their intentions are, it's only beneficial. So I'm really happy that you're here, and I'm happy that my videos have been helpful. My podcast is called It's Not Normal, and I'm on episode 9. I just released episode 9 today. Episode 10 will be coming out next week. And so we're still kind of in the early stages, but it's evolved a lot since we first started. And I basically just dive into a lot of the topics that I talk about here on TikTok in a little bit more depth. Because these topics are so massive and there's so much that kind of goes into them. And, even just sharing more of my personal experience, like anecdotes and things like that. I've really been enjoying the longer form, video and putting content out there. Because sometimes there's only so much that you can get across in a couple of minutes, And so diving deeper into these topics and also answering your comments. I've been getting so many comments on my TikToks since I started posting them. And I try my best to keep up with all of the comments and all of the messages, the DMs, and I really do try to stay on top of it, but it gets a little overwhelming at times. And so I like to dedicate a certain chunk of time for the podcast where I just kind of go through comments and I answer some of them, just to kind of make a point to do that. And yeah, so if you want to check it out or listen to it, it's on YouTube and Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere that you can listen to or stream a podcast, it's up there. How do you manage the anxiety of people knowing things about you? That's a great question. I guess I have experienced in my personal life people that I trust, right? My parents, invading my privacy or kind of doing things behind my back. I think my parents have broken my trust, and they've maybe tried to figure things out about me or learn things about me that I didn't want them to know or that I wouldn't tell them or whatever it might be. And I think having experienced that in a relationship that's so close and so valued, I guess, for so much of your life, it makes it a little bit easier, I guess, in a way, to think about that with other people, because I feel like in a lot of ways, like I've experienced some pretty harsh things when it comes to that, like with my own family, with people that I'm really close to who do know me, from the time I was born, that's such an intimate relationship, I guess. And so I guess it's not as big of a deal for me when I think about like other people knowing things about me. I'm pretty at peace with the things that I've done in my life, the way that I've lived my life. I'm happy with where I am right now. I always kind of just try my best to be a good person and to put things out there that I believe in, that I think can be helpful or valuable. And I mean, at the end of the day too, like there's just a certain level of like not caring that I think you have to embody day to day, because I don't know, if you worry too much about what other people think about you, it's just going to be so consuming, and the only people's opinions who actually matter, in my opinion, is, your own. What do you think of yourself? Are you happy with the person that you are and the way that you've lived your life? And if there are people in your life who you value their opinion and you admire them and the way that, they live their lives, if they think that you're doing well, then that is really all that matters to me. So I feel like that's kind of the way that, I don't know, I manage that anxiety. And yeah. Can you turn that light on? Thanks. Always happy to be popping up on your For You page. I try to be pretty vulnerable. I try to be pretty honest about my experience and what I've been through. Kristen, oh my goodness. Any advice for when your parents don't accept your romantic partner? This, in and of itself, I think might be a podcast episode one day. So, for a little bit of background, I guess, I, as you know, I'm sure if you're here, grew up in a narcissistic family. I was naive to a lot of the emotional abuse and manipulation that I had endured when I was younger. And it all started to, I guess, come to a head when I met my husband, obviously boyfriend at the time. And I was 21 years old when that happened. And before him, I had gone on a couple of dates here and there, but I never had a serious romantic relationship. Part of the reason for that was because, I never met anyone who I was like, wow, like this has the potential of like really going somewhere, like I feel this deep connection with you. And it was also because I never really made it past 2 or 3 dates with a person, because if I didn't feel that immediately, I was like, this isn't worth having to come up with these elaborate stories or lies or sneak out of the house or say I'm going here or there, because I knew that if I told my parents that I was going out on a date, then, it would just result in a massive argument. And I was also kind of under the impression still that I was living and existing as an extension of my parents. And so I would ask them, if I could do things instead of telling them that I was going to do something. So after I met my husband, we hit it off immediately. Like the conversation that we had the day that we met lasted for almost 4 hours. And it was the best introduction to another human being that I ever could have imagined. And so I remember leaving there that day and not fully understanding like what was going on, but I was like, something happened. Like something has changed in my life. And like, I don't know, man, but this boy is special. And so eventually we started off working on a project together, and then we started dating pretty quickly after that. And I think my parents just kind of viewed him as a threat someone who was going to be taking up a lot of my time and my energy. I wasn't going to be as available to them as I once was. Not to mention he was thinking of moving to the West Coast, and obviously I was falling more and more in love with him, and so I was entertaining that idea. And so I think they just viewed him as someone who was going to take me away from them. And so that is when I first kind of had the realization. I remember journaling a few months into our relationship and just saying, like, I think that I am in an emotionally abusive relationship. And, like, it's really weird to have this realization now and to actually, like, put it down on paper. But that was when it all became clear to me, because a lot of their toxic behavior was just ramped up and intensified, where everything in my life got much, much worse. Because I didn't want to give up this relationship. I was far too in it, and I cared about Brandon so much and really saw a future with him. And I was like, it's too valuable to just let go for the sake of my parents, And so I stood my ground for pretty much the first time, I feel like, in my life. And I mean, there were arguments daily. I would be getting yelled at for hours a day, every day, just consecutively. Everything that I did became an issue. It was harder and harder for me to do anything. A lot of lies and invasions of privacy, just attempts to sabotage mine and my husband's relationship. And so ultimately, I ended up moving out, and Brandon and I moved in together, and that was, I guess, the start of the distance between mine and my parents' relationship. And that was when I was first able to kind of start to understand the situation that I had been living in for so much of my life. I was able to start to heal. I was able to start to do a lot of research to kind of, give myself a little bit of perspective, I guess. So I tried. I do not have the answer to that. I tried with my parents to ask them, I always felt like I was a really good kid. I did well in school. I had a small circle of friends in high school. I never really got in trouble. And I remember just asking them, kind of just pleading with them, like, I haven't done anything bad up until this point. And I'm asking you to please just trust my judgment in this situation too. I wouldn't go into a relationship with someone who doesn't treat me right, or isn't a good person, or is dangerous to be around, or whatever it might be. Like, you have to trust my judgment here, because you've gotten me this far. You know what I mean? You've raised me up until this point, and I haven't really disappointed you. So just give me a chance. Like, give me a chance to figure it out. And it was really difficult, to have, like, the most tumultuous time with my parents be happening all while in the first few months of my first serious relationship ever. This time that was really happy and exciting. It was also kind of like the opposite of that when I got home, So I am sorry if your parents don't like or accept your romantic partner. Like I said, I tried to ask my parents to just trust my judgment, to give me some time to figure it out, even encourage them to kind of get to know my romantic partner, like, let's all get to know each other, ask him some questions if you have any, like, let's start to develop this relationship. But that's only going to happen if your parents are willing to kind of meet you in the middle. And unfortunately, mine were not. Maybe it's a little bit of a different situation for you. I hope. Brightest blue. I don't know what you mean. I'm the Vogue girl. What do I mean by no contact Christmas? So basically, when I talk a lot about narcissism and growing up in a narcissistic family, and anytime you break out of a relationship like that, or an emotionally abusive relationship, and you just kind of like cut off all contact with a person, I feel like that's typically referred to as no contact. And so this was the first Christmas that I spent not reaching out to my parents, not being invited or going over to their house, and receiving nothing in return. There was no contact between my parents and I this Christmas. Hearing an actual radio announcer and music on Christmas made me cry. LOL, nostalgia. Yeah, nostalgia hits hard sometimes, for sure. Indoorsy Canadian. All of your content has really helped me to not feel alone on my first no contact Christmas. I'm so glad. I'm so happy to hear that. You guys all helped me to feel a lot less alone also on my no contact Christmas. I was looking forward to hopping on here, honestly, and talking to you about all of this because I feel like you guys really get it. You know what it's like. And it's awesome. Bree, did you feel the need to lie a lot in your childhood? I struggle with it in my adulthood now. Yeah, so when I was younger, I would say probably 14 and younger, I don't necessarily think I lied too much just because I was really existing as an extension of my parents, where I took on a lot of their opinions and emotions as my own. And so, more often than not, I think I felt the way, particularly that my narcissistic parent wanted me to feel. I would say or do the things that he wanted me to do. And so I guess there wasn't much of a need for me to lie. I was also very sheltered and I wasn't really allowed to go out with kids my age or anything like that. So, I was just thinking like, yep, this is the way that everybody lives. And, my family's just like everyone else. And I'm just kind of happy doing what I'm doing here because I was happy to receive that validation and that love and care from my narcissistic parent. And I think, even as a kid, I realized that I would get that when my interests and opinions aligned more closely with their own. And then once I got to high school, that was kind of, I was spending more time in school. I was involved in extracurricular activities or sports or whatever it might be. And so I was developing with these bonds or developing these bonds with kids my age for kind of the first time. When I was younger also, like in elementary school, I was a really studious kid. I was very conscientious. I loved learning. I loved school. And, I was also scared of ever doing anything wrong or getting in trouble. So I would always work really hard and get good grades. And the kids in my elementary school, for the most part, didn't really share that belief system. I feel like school was a lot less serious to them. And once I got to high school, I was in a lot of honors and AP level classes. And so I found a group of kids who shared that mentality, probably a little bit too much so, where we would like study for 6 hours and, we were maybe a little obsessive about it, but we had that in common and none of us had really found that up until that point. So it was great for us to come together. And so, I'm spending more time with them and now I'm like, I want to go over my friend's house, or like I want to go out to the diner with them or to go see a movie with them. And they want me to go with them too. Like I'm getting invited, this is awesome. And so that, I feel like the first little shreds of independence, I guess, that was when I started to feel like I had to lie a little bit because I would be met with so much resistance when it was, something as simple as going over a friend's house for a sleepover or, going to the diner or whatever it might be. And, I didn't want to miss out on these things either, even just like going to a party, like a high school party. I didn't want to miss out on these things. And so if there was ever something that came up where I was like, I really want to do this and I know that the answer is probably going to be no, but it shouldn't be, then I would lie for sure. I was a little bit more secretive, I guess, in private with my parents just because I never felt comfortable sharing how I truly felt about something or, who I truly was, what my opinions were, if I liked a boy or if I was having trouble with my friends, whatever it might be. I never felt like I could be really honest or vulnerable with them. One, because I think I thought that I would be judged for it. Maybe I would get in trouble for it. I remember if I, had an issue with a friend or if we had a little scuff here and there, and if I was upset about it and if I brought that to my parents and I said, oh, so-and-so like did this and I don't really feel too great about it, their advice would be to just write them off immediately, and then if I decided to kind of forgive them and work through it and now we're hanging out again, that would be kind of a source of tension, because it was like, oh, I thought that they did this to you. Like, they're not a good person. How are you hanging out with them again? And so a lot of the time it just became a lot easier to handle all of these things on my own and always pretend like everything was fine. And again, as I got older into like my late teens, early 20s, I would definitely lie a lot to my parents when I started going out on dates and, meeting up with people that my parents didn't know or whatever it might be. Because I just wanted that freedom. I feel like it was natural. It was coming naturally to me at that point. And I felt like it was something that I deserved, something that I feel like every kid deserves is to have a bit of freedom. So yeah, I would definitely lie. And, it's strange sometimes to feel like you don't have to lie anymore. Like you can actually just be open about what you want to do and what you're doing. Angel, I would love to know your experience on going from being in contact to no contact with your family. So I definitely get into this a lot more in today's podcast episode. It's Not Normal, episode 9, if you want to check that out. But, you know, in general, when I was living with my parents, again, I was naive to a lot of what was going on. And I was just kind of enduring it, I think, because I was in survival mode. Like that was my environment. That's where I was sleeping and eating. And so I kind of had to make the best of my situation. And even when things would be negative, you know, I never felt like I could express any kind of negative emotion if I was still upset about something, because then I just became the target for not moving on or living in the past. And, you know, it gets exhausting to kind of portray any kind of negative emotions as a way of saying like, hey, I'm still upset about this, but I know we're not going to talk about it, so this is kind of the only way that I can do this. And then after moving out of my parents' house, you know, leading up to that, the months leading up to that were pretty tumultuous. And afterwards, there was just a lot of guilt tripping, a lot of texts and calls and little meetups here and there where, you know, they basically just were trying to force me to come back home. And so I think our communication for a time was pretty limited to just negativity. And then in time, you know, we started like talking here and there. Something kind of prompted us to start talking again. And it was okay. But then I started to realize that it was only okay because I was pretending like everything was fine. I wasn't talking about any of the actual issues at hand or how I was feeling, you know, as an adult now, starting to realize all of this abuse and this really toxic environment that I had grown up in. And I don't know, I guess when I brought that up, that was when things kind of started to change also, because they weren't willing to have that conversation, you know. So when I was in contact with them, it was, I guess, nice to an extent because we were in contact and we were talking, but it was really more of just like a mental drain. I didn't feel like I could be myself. I felt like I was being judged. I wasn't comfortable sharing things about my life or what was going on with me. There was a lack of trust there also. And so I think, as sad as it can be sometimes, going no contact has definitely brought me a lot of peace of mind. Yeah, what happens in the family stays in the family. Oh, Emmy May, I am so sorry about that. Showing up uninvited, not cool. And involving other people. Yeah. Oh, you got the CCTV though. Good. Yeah, it's important to protect yourself, you know, in all seriousness. Angel, thank you so much. I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be sharing, and I'm really glad that my videos are helpful. Thank you, Brittany. This was actually a Christmas present from my husband. It was in my cider cart previously, and I love ducks, and I don't know if they're ducks or geese, but I don't really care. It's super soft and cozy, and I made its debut today. But it's nice because it just, like, it hits right, you know, like when your sweater meets your pants just perfectly, like it's right there, and the sleeves are nice and long, so I can like outstretch my arms, and look, they're still like covering my hands. It's not like they're riding up. Emmy May, I'm glad that you did not feel scared this year. Yeah, I understand that also when it comes to a narcissistic dad, like being, I guess, having that fear of violence, you know, it's definitely very intimidating. And I feel like that is also a really interesting tactic in terms of control when it comes to narcissists, narcissistic dads, I guess, in particular. Like when you're a little kid and you think about like I guess when I think about it now, being like so small and young, and then you have like this massive towering creature over you who's so much bigger and louder than you are, it's like, how are you ever going to go against that? Soswa? Soswa? I have no idea if I said that right, but happy to have popped up on your For You page, and I'm sorry that your family Christmas is painful. Hi, Franny. You're so right. You don't realize how not normal it is until you step out of it and actually discuss it with friends. And I am very lucky to say that I have some very, very good friends who are always willing to listen and who actually care about me and accept me for me. Oh, I just jumped all the way down to the bottom of the comments. Hold on. Getting back up here. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Jade, I think. CB. Brandy said he heard you chuckle. Holloway, thank you for sharing.
Let's see his going.
Cass. At my sister's wedding in Mexico, several family members exposed themselves as racist toward my boyfriend. Oh my gosh. They attacked me and him, calling us sensitive. It's been 6 months, no contact, hard stuff. My boyfriend love really showed me that the way I was loved was all transactional. Yeah, I relate so much. There is a guilt sometimes when everyone is saying, I met him and changed. Like, yeah, I'm not your puppet anymore. Yeah, I totally understand. First of all, I'm really sorry. That's totally not cool of your family. But in the same breath, I guess maybe it's better to know what you're dealing with, you know, than them kind of like pretending but having those feelings anyway. I totally, I feel like resonate with that, or that resonates with me. I remember feeling the same kind of energy from my parents where it was like, you know, when I first met Brandon, he was working a lot at night. And so there would be times where, you know, I was up at 1 or 2 in the morning, just naturally, like on my own. And he'd be coming home from work and be like, oh, like, do you want to go to the diner on like a Friday night, you know? And I'm like, hell yeah. You know what I mean? Because why the fuck not? Like, I'm 21 years old, like literally talking about going to the diner. And like that would trigger a massive argument where it was like, you're so different now. You know what I mean? Like, you never would have done something like that. And it's like, 1, because I didn't have anyone inviting me to the diner at 2 o'clock in the morning. And 2, because you probably wouldn't have like allowed me to go, or I knew it would have been an issue. And so I didn't fight for it because I just didn't care that much. And even I remember one time like straightening my hair, because I used to straighten my hair all the time when I was in high school. And then I finally was just like, you know what, fuck it. I have to like learn to love the curls. But one day I wanted to straighten it because I wanted to show Brandon what it looked like when it was straight. And like we had just found like an old straightener in the bathroom closet. So I straightened my hair and I saw my mom that day. This was years ago at this point. And she was like, you straightened your hair for him. And I was like she thought that he made me like straighten my hair, that he was like changing me in some way. And I was just like, no, like this was my decision. Like this was solely my decision. I was doing it for fun. And like, I'm not changed. I'm not controlled, I guess, but I am changed, right? Because like you said, I'm no longer your puppet. I'm actually becoming an individual. I'm free to be who I want to be and do the things that I want to do. And like, I didn't have that freedom with you, so you don't really know who I am now. And that doesn't mean that it's a negative, you know? Yeah, boundaries, Holloway, for sure. I didn't know that what boundaries were or that they could exist. And I think meeting my husband and being in such a healthy, just understanding, free relationship was really eye-opening, because I was understanding what unconditional love was, and I was starting to realize that the relationship and the love between my parents and myself was conditional. Like you said, it was transactional. I think, Cass, you said that. And it's upsetting, it's like, you love me and we're in good standing so long as I'm saying and doing the things that you want me to say or do. But as soon as I deviate from that, that love and affection goes away. And it's such an intense method of control. And I feel like, I was naive to it for the longest time. But then being in a relationship where it's like, I can say or do whatever I want. I'm free to be myself. And regardless of what that means, I'm going to be receiving love from this person. It's not transactional, it's not conditional, and it's so nice. OOP. I will never be able to tell you how much you've helped me realize things about myself and my mother. Thank you. I really, the amount of support that I've gotten from you on this app, which is so funny because social media is such a strange thing to begin with, but I feel like when you use it properly, it really allows you to connect with people that you otherwise never would have known or spoken to. And I'm just so glad that this platform is available to talk and to be vulnerable and to share experiences and to help one another. So, oop, that's what I'll say instead of spelling it out. I'm happy you're here. Thank you. Oh, Cass, you were told he brainwashed you to hate the family. Yeah, it's like, that's just not the case. It's not. They just become like your romantic partner, especially if you grew up in a more controlling, narcissistic household, and you were the puppet, you were the extension of your parents, always doing and saying what they wanted them to do. And now all of a sudden it's like you're introduced to this new perspective where it's like, wow, okay, the world is actually a little bit different, a little bit more open and understanding. I don't have to live under this control anymore. You know what I mean? There are other kinds of relationships and dynamics. I think the person who introduces you to that can often be painted as, the villain or an enemy, because it's like, no. You're showing them that this is too good. Bring them back in here. You know what I mean? They're showing you something and that's wrong. And it's just not the case. I feel like it's just a way for them to make the person who's showing you these really good, healthy things seem like the bad guy. Wow, that was a loud one. Vic, just found your podcast, and I cannot relate enough. Started my no contact Christmas Day. Wow. Oh my goodness. I hope that it was very peaceful. I hope the negative emotions did not surface too much. I'm sure I hope you weren't feeling too down. That's a bold move. And, I think making the decision to go no contact is a hard one. It's rarely easy or, something that you want to do necessarily. I know I went no contact really strictly out of necessity, just preserving my own mental energy, I guess. And that can be a hard day to start it, but I'm proud of you for prioritizing yourself, and like I said, I hope that the day came and went without too much negative emotion. So I hope it was a really great Christmas. Oop, I feel loved. I feel so much love, and I really, really appreciate it. And I love all of y'all. Holloway, I had to move to a new city to wake up and have those realizations. 4 years no contact now. Wow. And how do you feel being 4 years no contact? Do you ever feel any of those negative emotions still kind of come to the surface? Do you ever, is the grief still there? Or the guilt or anything like that? Do you feel like it gets easier with time? But very similar. I started to just recognize a lot of the emotional abuse when I met my husband, and it was only 4 months after we met that I ended up moving out. So it was pretty quick. And after being out of that, even still now, I'm 5 years out of my parents' house, and I'm still sometimes having realizations about things, and it's a lot, but I had to be out of that environment to understand it all. And there was a book that I read that kind of prompted this whole healing journey. It's like what started it for me. And it just put a lot of things into perspective. And one of the phrases, I guess, in that book, it was highlighted, or I highlighted it, was the past remains present until it's processed. That was one of them. And another one was trauma is what we hold inside until we're in the presence of an empathetic witness. Something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, but it made so much sense to me, because I was like, if I understood what was going on while I was there and I had no choice but to endure it, as like a 12, 13, 14-year-old, it would have been even more exhausting, I'm sure, than, it was without really knowing, what was happening. Maybe that much harder to deal with, and to just kind of like, I feel like I always made the best of my situation, or I tried to. And I feel like if I wasn't able to process all of those emotions because I wasn't in a healthy enough environment, or, a compassionate enough environment to actually understand how I was feeling and to discuss those emotions with another person. And I definitely was not in the presence of an empathetic witness until I met my husband. So very thankful for that, and to finally have processed all of this. I've never been so relieved to be no contact. Good for you. I am so happy for you. And honestly, same. I'm pretty at peace with my decision, and it's nice to kind of go day to day, not wondering was anything going to happen today? Am I going to hear from anyone today? Like, am I going to feel bad today? It's like I can just start living my own life. Thank you. Who am I? Thank you for the partner advice. I'm at a point where she said it's him versus me. Yeah, see, parents shouldn't make you choose. And I remember feeling that, where it was like I became the scapegoat. I was like the golden child, I think, for as long as I could remember. But I also was like the target sometimes. But I feel like my general role was the golden child. And then after I met my husband, I became the scapegoat, where me going out or me doing these things, everything that was going wrong in our family, from personal relationships to financial issues, whatever it might be, became my fault. And I remember feeling like, I'm in the middle of my partner and my family, and I'm going to have to make a choice at one point, because these two things are clearly not coexisting. And for me, my thought process, I guess, one, right, I wasn't feeling that love and support from my parents. Like, this was not a vibe right now, I guess. And, with my partner, like, everything was so much different, where it was open and honest and understanding. And I was like, this is great. So this feels a lot better. And I also remember thinking, like, I'm 21. The closest years I think that I have with my parents are in the past. They were like this part of my life, my earlier life. And by choosing my partner, I felt like I was choosing my future. Like, he's the person that I'm going to marry. He's the person that I'm going to have a family with. And, I didn't want to sacrifice that for, I guess, a relationship with people who were making me choose, or pitting me against someone else. Josiah, it's okay to cry, even if it's just low key. It could be high key, whatever. Emotions, it's good to let them out. A good cry can make you feel a whole lot better. Cinnabon. Thank you. Ginger Lime. Am I happy now? I am happy, yeah. I'm really happy with where I'm at in my life. Olive. Oh my God, twins. I was really torn between the sweater and the sweater vest. I might get a sweater vest from Cider at some point this year. Or I guess next year, because it's almost the end of 2023, which is crazy. Absolutely crazy. But wow, we're twins. We have the same sweater, and we went no contact this year. I am here with you, sending you a virtual high five. I also hope that this first no contact year wasn't too difficult for you. And I'm sure, even just based on what a ton of you were saying in the comments, that it does get easier with time. vibing with me. Your videos have helped me a lot. I relate to them so much. Hope you enjoyed your Christmas. Thank you. Really, really glad that my videos have been helpful, and I did enjoy my Christmas. Thank you for that, and I hope you enjoyed yours also. Awesome. Cass, thank you. Podcast is It's Not Normal, and it's everything that I've got going on right now is linked in the link tree in my bio here on TikTok. It's up on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere that you can watch or stream a podcast. We are up on there. We've got 9 episodes so far. I just released episode 9 today. I'll probably be posting some snippets from it here on TikTok in the next couple of days. But yeah, super proud of it and really excited to keep it going. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you, Moxie. Vic, I totally appreciate that. Thank you. Runaway Aries. I just went no contact with my mom, but my little sister is only 13, but things got physical with my dad and I just can't do it anymore, but I don't know how it will work to stay in contact with my little sis. Yeah, I am very sorry about that. I understand fully where you're coming from. The physical line should never be crossed, especially with any relationship, honestly. And I definitely, I don't know, I guess I remember feeling the same way, where I was like, this is a line that is never going to be crossed. And good on you for standing up for yourself and for recognizing that as just unacceptable behavior and getting out of that situation. And I think having a younger sibling definitely does complicate things and makes it a lot harder. I went through a very similar situation, and it was very difficult, to not be able to be in contact, to not really know what they were thinking or how they were doing. And I guess I have been able to kind of, this is hard because I can't talk too much about it just because it does involve other people, but I sympathize a lot with your situation. And I guess if you can figure out a way to kind of stay in contact with your younger sister, just to kind of check in and to make sure that everything is okay, that would be awesome. I would say the other thing is just to arm her with knowledge. That is probably the best advice that I have, just to let her know what's going on, behavior to be aware of, kind of like things to look out for, so that she can understand what's going on and be prepared, or as prepared as she can be, to kind of be existing in an environment like that. Merry Christmas. Oop. Can I have some advice on how to go no contact when my mom lives in the apartment next to me? Oh man, that's tricky. Well, I would say, I know, I'm trying to just keep up with all of them. I want to answer everybody. Maybe, when it comes to like social media or texts and phone calls, I feel like that can be relatively straightforward in terms of blocking the number or removing, your mom as a friend, or making your accounts private so she can't see what's going on. And then I guess maybe it would be beneficial to have a conversation with your mom if she would be receptive to something like that. I think that's the hard part about people that we entertain the idea of going no contact with is, to sit down and explain to them why you're making this decision, like for your mental health, because of their unhealthy behavior. More often than not, I don't think they're very receptive to that. But I guess it would just be boundaries, really try to kind of define what your boundaries are in terms of your relationship with your mom, what is okay and what's not, and do your best to stick to them, whatever that might be. And it might take some time, if you don't want to speak to her, if you don't want to see her, she might make an effort to just like be really present, or to be there when you leave or when you show up, when you come home, whatever it might be. So I guess it's going to be something that you have to feel out. But I guess my best advice, again, would just be to try to define your boundaries. And I guess ask yourself, like, how can you actually put these things into practice? Surya, thank you. I did have a good no contact Christmas. Thank you for that. Cass, the grief is totally present, and it's okay to let yourself feel that. It's okay to feel these more negative emotions, but just don't dwell on that and don't let it dictate, your day or your holiday or whatever it might be. Because at the end of the day, if they wanted to make things better, then they would kind of meet you halfway. They would be willing to compromise and to listen and to be understanding. And I don't know, if they're not, there's only so much you can do. Oh my gosh, I am far back in the comments. It skips down to the bottom every now and then. Let's see. Madeline, did you have bad dissociative, wow, that's a hard word for me to say, dissociative states when with them, but when you're not around them, there's clarity? I think I had a bit of a memory about this not too long ago from when I was younger. And funnily enough, it would happen like on the holidays when there were a lot of people around. And I remember just like I would be sitting at the table and I would say to my parents or to one of them, like, I kind of feel like I'm in a dream right now. Like, I'm here, but I'm not really here. It feels like everything, like the world is just happening around me. And since I've moved out of my parents' house, that hasn't happened. And I definitely feel a lot clearer just in general when I'm not around my parents. And I think it's just because I'm free to, be myself and make mistakes. Yeah, right, Cass. You can't mold kids into what you want them to be. They're already people when they come out. I completely agree. Like, you can guide them, and I feel like that is really great when it comes to like parenting. You want to kind of like guide your kids and maybe supervise them and give them advice, you know what I mean? But I feel like you have to kind of work with what's already there and you have to support them for who they are. Because at the end of the day, yeah, you're not going to be able to change them. And you want them to feel loved and comfortable, being around you and talking to you, even about the harder things. Gabby likes food. Currently no contact with my mom these past couple months, and it's especially hard during the holidays. It totally is. But you feel better having no contact, and you had a great holiday. I am so happy to hear that. It's like that sometimes, where the more difficult decisions end up giving us a bit more peace. Emmy May, getting stronger every day, and you are not in this alone. We are all in this together, not to quote High School Musical. Although, what a film. But yeah, it gets easier every day, for sure. Hey to hey. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching my videos. I'm glad they made their way to you. Still don't know how to make my own decisions, even on little things like the meal I'm having. It can be really difficult to kind of be decisive as you get older, when for so much of your life you've made decisions based off of what you thought other people would want you to do, that it can almost be like paralyzing to just think about, what do I want to do? Because on one hand, you haven't had a lot of practice, or I guess freedom to experiment and to see what it is that you want, like you haven't had a lot of opportunity to figure out who you are and the things that you like or dislike. But then there's also like the pressure of feeling like, okay, if I make the wrong decision, then, you know, I might get in trouble for it. And so I have to make sure that I'm doing what this other person wants me to do so that I don't get punished or I don't get in trouble. So yeah, it can definitely be difficult as you move into adulthood to feel decisive, you know, or comfortable making decisions for yourself. But with practice, I mean, that gets easier. I think that's the only thing that'll make it easier, is just doing it and then doing it again and again until these things start to come a little bit more naturally to you. Sarah, it is a strange thing to get to know yourself when you're a bit older, for sure. But hey, at least we're here, right? Better late than never. Oop, I love you too. Thank you for tuning in and for commenting. I'm loving this conversation with all of you right now. All right, let's see.
People are saying, whose questions is she responding to? Is this pre-recorded? Where's Hey? I'm not seeing some comments either.
Yeah, no, there's like a ton. I just don't want to like miss anyone.
I know, but you gotta go to the bottom.
All right, I'm on the bottom now. Okay, for everybody who's watching who doesn't know the comments that I'm answering, I am a little far back just because, I don't know, it's hard for me to skip over comments. And I really do just want to like answer as many of them as possible. So they might be a little far back in the comment section, but I'm down here on the bottom now. So hello, Haley Miller. Thank you for your support to all of us. Thank you guys for all of your support. Bitch Ass Bobby, thank you. I am obsessed with this sweater as well. Aggie Millie, yeah, hey, she was way back in the comments just a little bit, and it's not pre-recorded. I'm live. I don't think you can do a pre-recorded live on TikTok. Okay, Albana, how do you deal with narcissistic parents when you still live with them? So that is definitely difficult, I guess, to just like to understand what's going on all while still existing in that environment. But I feel like, and this is something that I say a lot, I feel like knowledge is power. I think being naive to what's going on and just kind of like enduring this abuse without knowing it is a lot, I don't know, I guess it's a lot more confusing. If you understand that, okay, maybe you're dealing with a narcissistic parent, it's a lot easier for these things to feel less personal because it's like, you know, they're not doing this. There's nothing wrong with me. You know what I mean? They're not targeting me for any specific reason. Like this is a them problem. Understanding things like gaslighting and triangulation, all of these really toxic tactics that narcissists use to control or to attempt to control people in their lives. Understanding what that looks like and when you're encountering them can be really beneficial, because I don't know, I guess knowing what's going on is probably the best thing that you can do if you still have to live under the same roof as a narcissist, because then you don't give in to that behavior, you don't feed into it, you understand that your feelings are valid. And I also, something that was really beneficial for me was that I journaled a lot. I made a New Year's resolution one year to journal every day. And I was so thankful that I did because, you know, anytime you were being gaslighted or, you know, you were doubting maybe like how bad something was, if you can go back and kind of see what actually happened because you have an account of it, you know, you wrote about it, that is also really helpful, or at least it has been for me. Kind of give me some peace of mind. Alrighty. No contact Christmas. That's basically, this was the first Christmas that came and went where I did not have any contact with my narcissistic parent. The first holiday season is rough, but as you establish new traditions, it gets better. I completely agree. You know, a lot of the healing journey for me has just kind of been like leaning into that independence and autonomy that I hadn't for a really long time. And I think you can apply the same thing to holidays and holiday traditions. You kind of ask yourself, like, what do you want to do? What's something that's really fun? Who do you want to hang out around? Like, what are the activities that you want to do throughout the day? And realizing that you have the freedom and ability to actually make those things happen can be really refreshing. All right, let's see. Cass, I haven't had any guests on the podcast yet, just because I don't really have the setup for it yet. But I definitely would like to do that at some point. And I think once I figure out the best way of doing that, just in terms of like logistics and setup and things like that, it's totally something that I would entertain for sure. Because I love having conversation. Oh, the sweater is a big hit. Brandon, the sweater is a big hit. Thank you for getting it for me. Yeah. Thank you, Cara. Do I feel like I obsess over my parents? No offense, none taken. And no, I definitely don't think I obsess over my parents. I do think that they are something that come up a lot in terms of like, things that I think about, or I think at this stage in my life also I'm having, I've had and I'm continuing to have a lot of realizations about who I am and why I am the way I am. And even moving into adulthood, I feel like I'm viewing life through a little bit of a different lens than I did, obviously, when I was younger. And so I'm starting to get to know myself in a new way. And, when a certain behavior pops up or I have a feeling towards something and maybe it's a little bit more negative, now I feel prompted to kind of look at it for what it is, try to understand it, try to trace it back so I can see where it comes from. And so I think my parents in general and my relationship to them is pretty naturally just intertwined to a lot of kind of the self-reflection and the growth that I'm not going through, but that's present in my life right now. So I also think sometimes like I think about my situation and it just seems shocking to me, because it's like you feel like you were blind for a really long time and now all of a sudden like the blindfold has been pulled off, and it gets easier to understand and to kind of like come to terms with, but there are still times when I think about it or I'm prompted to think about it, and it's pretty shocking. So Haley Miller, how do you deal with siblings who don't want to be accountable and point fingers at you? Honestly, I have gone no contact with them also. One sibling of mine in particular I haven't spoken to in the last probably 4 or 5 years. And I think depending on the role that they fulfilled in this narcissistic family, they were probably pressured to view me in a certain way or to act a certain way towards me. And, if I don't feel like I can make a breakthrough with them or, move forward in a healthy way, then I'm probably just not going to reach out or have much contact until they're ready to, I don't know, I guess understand like why they are the way they are, and to maybe have develop a certain willingness to move forward in a healthy way, to have more difficult conversations, to look at things a little bit more objectively. And I don't know, I guess until that happens, it doesn't really seem like it's in my best interest to foster any kind of a relationship with a sibling like that. For sure. Thanks so much for asking. I think I'm going to be realizing things about myself and my life and my behavior forever. And I feel like that's kind of a positive thing because, as people, I think we're always growing and evolving. And I think that that's a really healthy thing. And so I think to an extent, I'll always be in the realization period. But for the most part, in terms of like realizing my trauma, I do feel like I'm on the back end of that just a little bit. Or, at least I know that I'm no longer in the beginning. I remember a time before this. I remember kind of encountering it for the first time and being flooded with a lot of these emotions and feelings. And, again, feeling like the blindfold was pulled off. And I've done a lot of self-reflection and a lot of work in that time. So I feel like some of my more negative behaviors or emotions, or, you know, these impulses like this perfectionism or this hypervigilance, whatever it might be, that I encounter more often, I've grown to understand what they are and where they come from. So it doesn't feel as new to me as it once did. But wow, yeah, it has been an hour already and my phone is dying. So with that, I think I'm going to hop off for tonight. But I had an awesome conversation with all of you. Thank you to everybody who tuned in and who commented or asked questions. And if you want to see more, especially if you want to learn more about what my first no contact Christmas was like, be sure to check out today's episode of It's Not Normal, which is available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast. It is all linked in the link tree in my bio. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I will be back very soon to hop on another live. Bye. Bye, Franny.